Uhuru, Uhuru, Uhuru. Welcome everyone to this very special event tonight hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee titled The FBI versus Black Power. I want to start off by saying Uhuru to everybody. And for anyone who is hearing that word for the first time, Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And my name is Jesse Neville. I have the honor to be a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the cadre organization of white people working for reparations and solidarity with African people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the founder and leader of the Uhuru movement. And I also have the honor to be the chair of our mass organization, Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Before we get started, if you are tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to get alerts anytime we go live or post a new video. If you're tuning in on Facebook, please share this live stream with your friends. Let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from, regardless of what platform, whether you're here with us on Zoom, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube. Let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from so we can shout you out and appreciate you for being with us tonight. We will have a Q&A later in the program, so take notes. There's going to be a lot of information in tonight's event, and you can ask questions in the comments on YouTube, Facebook, or Zoom, and we will be sure to address those later tonight. In today's study, we will be discussing the history of FBI repression and violence against the African Liberation Movement. We will be hearing from the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess, who has been a part of this organization since the party founded the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976. And part of the reason why we chose to have tonight's study on the topic of the history of the brutal terror and violence that the US government has carried out against the struggle of Black people, of African people fighting for their freedom and independence, is in response to the fact that on July 29th, of last year, just a few months ago, just last summer, the FBI carried out multi-state pre-dawn violent militarized raids against 7 homes and offices belonging to leaders of the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party, including the home on the north side of St. Louis of the founder and leader of this organization, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who at 81 years old has been fighting for the majority of his life, more than 60 years of his life, for the liberation of African people in the United States and around the world. And as well as the home of Onezene Yeshitela, the deputy chair of the African People's Socialist Party, who presides over all of the work of the Uhuru movement to build political and economic power in the hands of the African working class, including the Black Power blueprint on the north side of St. Louis. And I want to just salute the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, and say that the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement are in one unconditional solidarity and unity with the African People's Socialist Party in opposition to these brutal assaults that were carried out by the US government. And I just want to take a brief moment to tell you what went down on July 29th of last year and what the status of that is right now. And that will tell you why we're having this event, why it is so important that we're doing this event, not just to provide information and make it possible for us to have more educated conversations with our friends about the history of the FBI and COINTELPRO. This is not an information consumption kind of event. This is not a talk fest. This is a call to arms. This is a call to action. The desired end result of this event tonight is that every single person who made the decision, and we salute you and we welcome you to come to this event tonight, will leave this event tonight ready to take action, ready to get involved, ready to join the campaign to demand hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. And again, I want to say that on July 29th of last year, just a few months ago, the FBI used battering rams and broke down the doors at 5 o'clock in the morning in St. Louis, 6 o'clock in the morning in the Eastern time zone in St. Petersburg, Florida. They violently invaded the homes and offices of 7 locations of the Uhuru movement In the chairman's home in North St. Louis and deputy chair's home, they used the battering ram to smash down the door. They used a loudspeaker to demand that they come out with their hands up. They ordered them to sit on the curb as a form of humiliation, which they refused to do. And they used drones. They almost hit Deputy Chair Onis Nezhatela in the head with a drone that they deployed in their house. They detonated multiple flashbang grenades. They smashed through windows. They came in through the back and the front, creating just a rippling wave of destruction throughout their home on Redbud Avenue in North St. Louis, a deeply impoverished neighborhood of the African community under colonial exploitation in the north side of St. Louis. They handcuffed the chairman and deputy chair and proceeded for hours to raid their home, to steal things, to loot things from their home, computers, phones, iPads, notebooks, notepads, and other kinds of things. And meanwhile, they did the same thing at the Uhuru Solidarity Center, where I am located right now, a building owned by the Uhuru Movement, the African People's Socialist Party, Black Star Industries, as an organizing base for white people to work in the white community and win solidarity with the African liberation movement and win unity through reparations, which is what our sign says right outside this building. They came in through with battering rams. They raided this building for 6.5 hours. They held us at gunpoint here, myself and Amanda Carlozzi, who live in the apartment on the second floor of this building. They did the same thing at the home of Penny Hess, who we'll be hearing from in just a moment, and African People's Solidarity Committee longtime member Kitty Riley. They did the same thing at the chairman and deputy chair's home in St. Petersburg, Florida. They did the same thing to Akile Anai, who's the director of agitation and propaganda, the editor of the Burning Spear newspaper for the African People's Socialist Party. And they did the same thing to the Uhuru House, a historic African community institution in the south side of St. Petersburg. And they did all of this with the bogus and racist justification, quote unquote, that they had an indictment of a Russian national in Russia who they say is actually the mastermind controlling the Uhuru movement and orchestrating its activity in this country and around the world to demand reparations to African people, to charge the United States with genocide against African people, and to fight for Black power and African self-determination. And we know that is not only a lie, but it is an insult and again, a racist trope, as the chairman has said, to suggest that African people lack the intelligence to know that they are oppressed, that they are facing these conditions, and that they are going to fight for their liberation, that it takes somebody else over in Russia or anywhere else to tell them that they need to know that. We reject that. And as white people, we don't want to be pandered to by this government with these base, racist, vulgar notions that underlie this bogus and very dangerous attack that the government has made against the African People's Socialist Party and against Chairman Omali Yeshitela. So we want to understand, if we really want to understand what happened on July 29th, though, you have to learn more than just what happened on July 29th. You got to know the whole history of this country, of this government, of this state, of the FBI, of colonialism itself. And we can understand that by studying the theory of African internationalism, the writings and works and speeches and analysis of Chairman Omali Yeshitela that makes it possible for us to see the world as it really is, and then be prepared and armed to do something to change it. So that's what this is about tonight. I want to salute our leadership, Chairman Omali. I want to salute African internationalism. I want to salute the African People's Socialist Party. And I want to salute and welcome the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who will be joining us in just a moment. And I want to again say that we're honored to have Chairwoman Penny present with us tonight. Chairwoman Penny Hess, along with myself, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and Director Akile have been named as so-called unindicted co-conspirators in this bogus attack the government is making. And Chairwoman Penny has been fighting for reparations to African people under the leadership of the party since 1976, and also authored a groundbreaking book called Overturning the Culture of Violence, which was written under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and is a must read for any white person that wants to begin the process of turning loose your whiteness and joining the rest of humanity on the terms set by oppressed peoples themselves. So before we turn to our discussion with Chairwoman Penny, let's take a look at this 3-minute video that was produced by the Hands Off Uhuru campaign to give a glimpse of what took place on July 29th. And then we will turn it over to Chairwoman Penny to begin this very important study tonight. Right? And then we will turn it over to Chairwoman Penny to begin this very important study tonight.
This is the FBI.
Right? And then we will turn it over to Chairwoman Penny to begin this very important study tonight. Hold on, we'll turn it over to Chairwoman Penny to begin.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here.
We're getting an echo. Hold on, sorry,
They handcuffed me and my wife out here.
We're getting. All right, we're gonna give that another shot. We had a little bit of technical difficulty there. Thank you, but I think while we're waiting to get that going, Chairwoman Penny, I see you have joined us. So I think maybe we should just keep it moving, and we'll be able to show that video a little bit later. But I just want to appreciate Chairwoman Penny Hess for joining us and turn it over to you, Uhuru.
Muted. Okay, Uhuru, just really want to appreciate that overview. Comrade Jesse, I want to welcome everybody who came out tonight. I think that this is extremely important, what we're going to be talking about tonight, this question of counterinsurgency and what that means. We want to give a definition of it as we have learned and understood from African internationalism and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I really want to join, as always, I have to salute my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has fought for over 60 years, every single day of his life, for the freedom and liberation of Africa and African people all over the world. African people as one people, wherever they have been forcibly dispersed and on the continent of Africa, and working tirelessly to solve the problems following the military defeat by counterinsurgency of the Black Revolution of the 1960s. And I also want to salute Deputy Chair Onezine Yeshitela, who is the architect, as she is known, of the Black Power Blueprint, the programs in North St. Louis that are incredible. I really urge everybody to go to blackpowerblueprint.org and just look. Everything is documented there, all of the amazing work, the transformation of condemned building into a vibrant community center and office building, the creation of a outdoor event space and community garden. This is going to be the third year of the farmers market, the One Africa, One Nation farmers market, the African Women's Doula program that trains women, African women from the neighborhood, the most impoverished neighborhood of North St. Louis, to become doulas or birth assistants, the community basketball court, and so many more things that is so beautiful, so dynamic in the middle of deep poverty that has been created and by this city and exists in this system, in this country built on the enslavement of African people and the genocide of indigenous people. And I just want to say, as has been said, that the context for this event is what happened on July 29th. And, you know, we talk about it every day. We sum up what happened. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, by the way, has given since July 29th, hundreds, literally hundreds of interviews to various media sources. And he tells the story each time. And each time I hear it, or each time we tell it and we say it, you know, it's just mind-boggling it's still shocking. It's still absolutely, you know, just really, really disturbing to understand that the US government, the colonial state, waged this vicious assault on the only organization building programs to uplift and transform the African community, not only in St. Louis, but all over the US and the world. with more than 50 economic institutions of dual and contending power, building economic and political power in the hands of the African working class. And, it's beautiful, it's life-giving. And this was, with the complicity of the city of St. Louis, they worked together with the FBI to wage this very, very violent attack. Just want to say quickly that today, members of the movement were able to present in a public hearing to the Board of Aldermen, or to a section of the board, the Public Safety Committee, the Board of Aldermen of St. Louis, a resolution submitted by Alderman Jesse Todd, who is amazing, who's courageous, who is a lifetime member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And he sponsored this resolution calling for the city to have a policy of non-compliance when the FBI and federal agencies come into St. Louis to attack organizations, especially in the African community, who may be facing charges stemming from their work building programs to uplift the African community, or any community that this would be related to. And it was very, very powerful. This is called the Dred Scott Sanctuary City resolution, calling for the city of St. Louis to vindicate Dred and Harriet Scott's plea to be able to seek refuge in this city after they had been freed from enslavement in another state and were brought back here and were re-enslaved, and they were calling for refuge, and that was denied. And as we know, with the statement that African people had no rights that any white person had to respect. So, this is saying that just as, in unity with sanctuary cities all over the United States in terms of immigration and non-compliance with ICE and other kinds of federal forces, that we were calling on the city of St. Louis to have such a policy in regards to refusing to work with the FBI to attack African organizations. And it was very, very powerful to have that experience today. We really want to salute Alderman Jesse Todd, who was, as we said, very, very, very courageous in presenting this to the board, and also to see that there were members of the board who were very moved and who were very familiar with the Black Power Blueprint programs, who had been there, who had come to various different things, even had their pictures taken in the middle of activities, with people, and who were very shocked and almost, speechless over what happened when we presented these assaults that took place on July 29th. So that was a very unprecedented and very powerful experience tonight. And what we want to talk about is this question of counterinsurgency. And counterinsurgency is basically all pervasive violence, anything. It's a war without terms. In other words, there's no rules for the war that the US government, as a colonial government, can wage against African and indigenous and colonized people who are rising up for their power, to regain their state power, to be able to overturn this vicious colonial government. And that we're talking about, when we talk about counterinsurgency, we're talking about violence that attacks the colonized. It is not something that white people generally experience. And so even when we see it, when we look back in the 1960s and see the COINTELPRO terrorism, assassinations, fake trials, just political imprisonment, all of the things that this government did to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, and so many more African activists and leaders of the African Revolution of the 60s, many people who we will never even know their names. But that we can maybe feel this is wrong, but it's so easy for us to walk by and just not do anything about it. And so we want to talk about that. And we want to say that our understandings of this, of course, are from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and that we understand that counterinsurgency is how colonialism is carried out and maintains its control and domination over African people inside this country and oppressed and colonized peoples here and around the world. And just looking it up on Wikipedia, it's saying counterinsurgency, and it's its acronym is COIN, or COIN, is, quote, the totality of actions aimed at defeating irregular forces. I mean, that is such a cold, clinical, US military way of saying, basically, it's everything that a colonizing army or power does to oppress and colonize people who are fighting for their lives, fighting for their liberation. And so Wikipedia goes on to say that the Oxford English Dictionary defines counterinsurgency as any, quote, military or political action taken against the activities of guerrillas or revolutionaries, and can be considered war by a state against a non-state adversary. But of course, because the state, the colonial state, has stolen, and oppressed the people and taken away their state, their ability for self-government. So they don't have state power, but they're fighting like hell to get it back. And it says that counterinsurgency can be considered war by a state against a non-state adversary. Modern thinking on counterinsurgency was developed during decolonization. Within the military sciences, counterinsurgency is one of the main operational approaches of, quote, irregular warfare. And I just want to say that a definition of irregular warfare is defined in the United States Joint Doctrine as a violent struggle among state and non-state actors for legitimacy and influence over the relevant population. That's how they say it, and it just whitewashes, what they're really talking about. They're talking about everything from military actions, war actions, psychological psyops, they call it, dirty tricks, surveillance, putting provocateurs into organizations, putting out slander and misinformation and trying to break up the unity of organizations and other groups with each other. Political imprisonment. Some of the political prisoners of the African Revolution of the 60s just got out of prison, and they were, like Sundiata Acoli and Mutula Shakur. They've been in for 40 and 50 years in prison for fighting for the liberation of African people. And both of those African freedom fighters have cancer, and they're basically on their deathbed, and they were released only under those circumstances. And that political imprisonment, assassination, and genocide, because part of counterinsurgency's tactics, which is called drain the sea, is basically a euphemism for just, when it all else fails, wipe out the entire population, which is what was done against the indigenous people here, and in so many fronts, also against African people here and around the world. And counterinsurgency involves white citizens' lynchings, burnings, African towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma. And, just remember that basically white people were deputized to be able to carry this out, what the chairman calls the white people's state, for which no white person ever faced indictment or trial or ever paid a price for any of the 10,000 lynchings that took place, at least in this country, for genocide, popular genocide. I'm talking about voluntary genocide that white people took upon themselves to carry out against the indigenous people, the burning of Tulsa and Rosewood and many other places. No white person paid a price for that. And that this is, this is part and parcel of counterinsurgency, the attempt to crush the just resistance of the colonized, which ultimately they can't do. So again, when we see this, when we see what happened, when we just the other day was the anniversary of Martin Luther King, and we know that, this coming April would be the anniversary of his assassination. We talk about, this government talks about, gives people a holiday after they killed him. As the chairman points out, that this, that we know that he didn't commit suicide. He was murdered, he was slaughtered, they tried to make him commit suicide. They tried to convince him to do that. They just used everything against him to slander him, to demean him, to try to demoralize him. And ultimately they assassinated him. And that's what this government did. So we can't just remember him in just some kind of fantastic way that, that covers over the truth that he was fighting for the liberation of Africa and African people. So one of the things, the key thing that the chairman has put out, has talked to us about, is that we have to understand what the chairman calls the colonial mode of production. And I really want to call on white people to not glaze over, not look away, not start thinking about something else, but to really dig into the fact of the understanding that everything that we have, every item to purchase, the ability to experience democracy and social wealth and the ability to pass property down from generation to generation, all of this is what is called the colonial mode of production. Mode of production means the way things are produced in a society. Is it privately owned? Is it owned by a landlord, a slumlord, or whatever? And that this colonial mode of production is how everything that we experience comes about. So therefore, this concept cannot be minimized. We can't minimize it. We can't rebrand colonialism as, as Biden said, a blight on America's soul. Or we can't even call it racism. It's not a bad policy. It's not the ideas in somebody's head. It's not bad people carrying out something. That the fact is that colonialism as a mode of production and counterinsurgency are part and parcel of the same thing. Again, colonialism is how we got and get everything. There is nothing that is produced for us or that we produce outside of the context that we live in, quote, America, that was born of the enslavement of African people and on the land, the stolen land of the indigenous people. The chairman says without slavery and genocide, there wouldn't be an America. And that colonialism is the understanding that this is what made Europe wealthy and powerful, that transformed Europe from feudalism, when most white people were poor and oppressed, and everybody was impoverished, even the nobility, that it was the assault on Africa. It was the theft of Africa's gold and land and resources, and certainly the theft of African people, the first great, the first highly lucrative commodity on this planet was African human beings, turning African people into commodities for sale, and just and enslaving them, stealing their intellectual property, their genius, not, even their lives, as the chairman has said, that African people have produced and reproduced real life for us. Everything that they have done historically has not gone to feed, clothe, and house them. It has gone to give us the ability to live our lives. And that from this assault on Africa, which, we can't even begin to say what that means, and the colonial domination of the continent of Africa as well, the genocide of 12 million people or more in Congo under King Leopold, the genocide of the Nama and Herero people in Namibia under Germany. I mean, South Africa, Cecil Rhodes, all of the atrocities committed against African people on the continent of Africa, including dividing up Africa in 1884 and 85 in the Berlin Conference, in something that created divided it up so that each European country got some of the bounty, the loot of African people stolen from them. And all around the world is this: India, the Philippines, Southeast Asia, all of Latin America, all of this under the colonial domination of Europe and the US, basically white power, white people, the colonizers, that has taken the planet Earth and continues to control the economy, that steals the resources from the people, so that you have a situation in Africa where the majority of the African population lives on less than $5.50 a day, when every single mineral and resource possible is just flowing in Africa for the benefit of white people. So the thing that we have to understand is colonialism does not go away by decolonizing one's mind, or these kind of things that you hear, decolonizing the classroom or moving off the grid or boycotting something. The chairman solved the problems left unsolved by the military defeat of the African Revolution of the 1960s. And he really created and I would say codified a political theory based on the world as it really is, and why the world is the way it is, based on the assault on Africa and this colonial pedestal upon which all white people sit on the backs of African, indigenous, and oppressed people. And this is what we have to come to terms with, what this means, because there is no changing the world until the colonial contradiction is dealt with. We have to be under their leadership. That is the only way that the world will change. That colonialism is backed up by the state. It is the nature of the colonial state. And no matter how nice the system tries to make its face, it is about one thing and one thing only: parasitism, sucking the blood of the people on this planet for our benefit. Colonialism is the nature of the superstructure of this system, of our lives, the legal system, how we think about ourselves, the educational system. All of this rests on the foundation of the reality of colonialism inside the United States and around the world. Why do we have 3 mass killings in a couple of days? The colonial mode of production. That is how this country was born. It was born on massacres. It was born on slaughtering people. This is carrying out the DNA of the United States and the world, basically. And the African Revolution of the 1960s was an anti-colonial struggle as critical as any other in the world, if not more so. It also sparked the revolutionary struggles of indigenous, Mexican, and other colonized peoples inside these stolen borders. To decolonize a people, the colonized must overturn and destroy the state apparatus of the colonizer and seize state power and all means of production into the hands of the African or colonized working class. They have to build a socialist state. But the destruction of the state, a true revolution, does not come about unless a majority of the colonized population is won to the position that the people must have political independence. This is the #1 strategic goal of the tactics and strategy of the African People's Socialist Party. And that African people, oppressed people, must have national liberation, political and economic power, self-determination in their own hands. The unrelenting resistance of the oppressed peoples weakens the colonial state and exposes that. And, you know, the chairman tells us that it is the resistance that we're seeing all around the world of oppressed people everywhere, in all kinds of ways, in terms of, like in Peru, where huge demonstrations are going on right now, to the fact that this economic alliance that's being built called BRICS, Brazil, India, China, Russia, and South Africa, is challenging the US, the hegemony of the US dollar, you know, all the different ways that this incredible resistance is manifesting itself all around the world. And the US is in a deep, deep crisis because of this. The people sometimes ask the chairman, how did he and the party survive the counterinsurgency of the 1960s? Well, as the chairman has made clear, there is only one way to do that, and that is the building and carrying out of a disciplined party centered irreversibly around the interests of the African working class, with democratic centralism, fierce accountability, criticism, self-criticism, based on the political line of African internationalism, which guides the people as the advanced detachment from period to period and becomes the collective memory of the colonized and points the way forward. There is no other way to win. Such a party is stronger and more deadly to the colonizers than all the military weapons on the planet. There has to be the people, and the people have to be organized, and that organization has to be fiercely, fiercely committed to the interests of the African working class, because if not, the interests of the colonizer, the interests of the neo-colonial or petty bourgeoisie will always come to a fore, because that's who has the ability to articulate, or the education, or whatever, the bourgeois education. No, this is dedicated to the interests of the African working class, and it has to be fought for over and over every single day. It is solid. This is what it has to be. And when there is a party like the African People's Socialist Party, it is worth 1,000 times more, even than the number of members it has, in terms of the influence and ability to lead the masses of the people. And just want to say that counterinsurgency, the colonial state uses death, destruction, rape, war, suffering, harm, violence, but resistance, the anti-colonial fight for liberation, is about life. It's about the masses of the people, the future the true human development. But before a quote insurgency can be waged, the war of ideas must be won. And this is what the chairman has fought for, because a revolutionary struggle is not something where a few people go out and commit some action to spark the people. No, that a revolution is based in the people. It is based in the unity of the majority, no matter the age, no matter the generation, no matter the gender, all of the people from children to grandparents, when they become revolutions, when they come to the conclusion that the only way that they and their children can survive and be free and happy is with their own political power, that they must fight, that they have no other choice in life. And this is what Chairman Omali Yeshitela has fought for. And this is what our responsibility is as part of this strategy, being white people under the leadership of the African Revolution, with the goal to an assignment to go, into the white population as Black power and white face, to be able to articulate this to white people and show other people just like ourselves the way forward, and also to make the challenge that we have to get down to the struggle. We have to see and be committed to the centrality of the colonial question, because no other reform or sideline issue is ever going to change this system. It has to be led by a party of the African working class. And I want to say too that white people have to be won to the right of African people to have the position that they have to be free and independent, that we have to say we fight for the right of African people and indigenous people, this is their land, to fight for their liberation. And we have a right to struggle for that and to struggle for reparations to African people. And I want to salute the chairman's tireless work, because in the 1950s and 60s, as the chairman said, the anti-colonial revolution was the main trend in the world. The Chinese, the Vietnamese, India, Cuba, Africa, all over the world, people were fighting and struggling against colonial domination. And it was a time of just hope and exuberance and, and just all of the cultural, the poetry, the philosophy, the writings of Richard Wright and James Baldwin and the jazz of John Coltrane and the music, the incredible music of the 1960s, it was just an outburst of an incredible renaissance that came from the struggle of African and oppressed people around the world. And counterinsurgency also includes just crushing out even the culture and the ability to express the ideas of liberation in song, in poetry, in life. And that when the party was built in the 1970s, and as it came to adulthood, so to speak, in the 1980s, that counterinsurgency was certainly becoming the main trend in the world. And what was once called a freedom fighter, even by the bourgeoisie, was now consciously called a terrorist. And the US government made that assertion that it would not call anybody struggling for their liberation a freedom fighter anymore, it would call them a terrorist. So, this is really critical. The party had its tactics and strategy for African liberation. And part of that was winning support for the independence position. The African People's Solidarity Committee came out of the line, and that strategy, the existence of APSC, was not just a good idea. It was a strategic move to strengthen and break the isolation of African people when they come under attack by the counterinsurgency, and to be able to win masses of white people to recognize that our future and our interests are on the side of the liberation of African and indigenous people and oppressed people around the world. So the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement gives us the opportunity to be on the positive trajectory for the future. That, yes, I am very proud to be called an unindicted co-conspirator, but there is nothing conspiratorial about the African People's Socialist Party. It is transparent. It is working for the total liberation of Africa and African people and the victory and liberation for all oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. Colonialism must go. Our responsibility is to win other white people, to stand on the forward side of history. The party is winning, and this is a very, very exciting period, and really powerful to be part of this victory being experienced by the leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella and the African People's Socialist Party and oppressed peoples around the world. This system is going down. Party is winning. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Wow. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny Hess, for that magnificent and very illuminating overview. And we are not done. We are going to continue with this study tonight. We have about 40 more minutes for this section where we want to go into a PowerPoint presentation that was prepared to go deeper into the history of the U.S. counterinsurgency, the colonial counterinsurgency, all the way up to today with the attacks against the African People's Socialist Party. And I just want to thank Chairwoman Penny for laying all that out so eloquently and in such a powerful way. And, I think that for white people, it can be and it should be challenging and difficult to be confronted with the reality of what this social system is and our relationship to it and what it means for the rest of humanity in relationship to us. But it is also very empowering and very liberating and very refreshing. And that's how I felt listening to that. And we're going to talk later on about how anyone who wants to join this organization can begin the process of doing that by going to apscuhuru.org and applying to become a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee. So before we go into the PowerPoint presentation, I just want to quickly shout out people who are tuning in tonight. Sayero out of Battle Creek, Michigan, Paul from Spokane, Bakari in Oakland, Diane that's Oakland, California, Spokane, Washington, Diane from Gainesville, Florida, Virginia from Louisville, Kentucky, Alex in Seattle, Washington, Wendy Snyder, Wendy S. from Oakland, California, Patricia in St. Louis, Erica in Portland, Susan from Boston, Angelica from St. Louis, Bernadine in Houston, Carpani from Arcata, California, Janet from Portland, Hallie in Brendan in St. Louis, Sangha from Portland, Robin in St. Pete, Leslie from Louisville, Christina in Florissant, Allison from the African People's Solidarity Committee in Philadelphia, and also Amanda here in St. Louis. I know Kitty, if I didn't mention, and also want to give a shout out to Sean in Palm Beach County, Florida. And I know.
And I also wanted to give a shout out to Angelica from the Green Party, and maybe you said that, but I just really wanted to salute her, and also Barbara, who was on the testimony this morning around the sanctuary city, to the board of aldermen.
Absolutely.
So really want to salute the Green Party. And
definitely want to salute the Green Party, and also want to shout out Sandy in Portland. And if you did not hear your name, please put your name in the chat. We want to give you a salute and thank you for joining us tonight on our various platforms. The Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. And yes, just wanted to, again, I wanted to give a special shout out to Sean joining us from Palm Beach County, Florida. And I definitely know somebody with that name who lives in Palm Beach County. So I'm excited that you're joining us tonight.
Sean.
Uhuru. All right. So before we dive into this PowerPoint, and we got Matt joining us as well. So, all right, keep it coming in the comments, but we want to take a look at the video. Actually, sorry to throw a curveball at our AV team. Let's take a look at that 3-minute video. And before we do that, I just want to say that We talked about what happened on July 29th, but what I forgot to mention is that there are strong indications now that within the next 2 months, the US government will be moving forward with making indictments of Chairman Amalia Shatella and the other so-called unindicted co-conspirators and possibly others as part of this just completely bogus and foul attack that they are making against the African Revolution. And we're going to talk later about the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. And this event tonight is actually part of that campaign because the chairman's strategy has been if they put Chairman Amalia Shatella on trial, the Uhuru movement and the chairman are going to put them on trial. And that means exposing their history and ongoing attacks against the righteous struggle of African people for their freedom. So let's take a look at this 3-minute video that shows you just what actually happened on July 29th. And then we're going to dive into the PowerPoint presentation before we move on. Uhuru.
This is the FBI. You have a federal warrant for this address. Keep your hands up and follow orders. This is the FBI. We have a warrant for this.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out. Something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
You need a breach? What do you need? Need one. I don't know. Oh, it's all better than money. Don't take it.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off the Uhuru movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of black people around the world.
Uhuru. Hands off Uhuru. Hands off Africa. So now we're going to jump into the PowerPoint presentation portion of this study. And I'll be presenting the first part and then turning it back over to Chairwoman Penny Hess. So again, this is the FBI versus Black Power presentation by the African People's Solidarity Committee based on the understandings of African internationalism Chairman Amalia Shatella, African People's Socialist Party. We want to salute Chairman Amalia Shatella and salute the leadership that the chairman has brought to the world struggle for freedom of African and oppressed peoples for more than 60 years. and also want to again salute Deputy Chair Onozanea Shatella and her incredible leadership, which is felt throughout the world in the work to construct the independent African workers' economy. And all of the members of the African People's Socialist Party worldwide, the party that just celebrated last year its 50th anniversary under the theme Relentless. And this presentation, on top of the incredible overview that Chairwoman Penny Hess just gave, gives the context for the coordinated pre-dawn two-state July 29th, 2022 raids carried out by the FBI against the chairman and the party. And we want to again just acknowledge that in this absurd indictment issued by the Department of Justice, quote unquote, against this Russian person in Russia, 4 members of the Uhuru movement were characterized as unindicted co-conspirators who now face the threat of indictment and arrest. And that includes, as seen here, Chairman Omali Shatella, who was the chief target of this attack, Director Akile Anai of the African People's Socialist Party, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and myself. Next slide. And what this presentation will continue to elaborate on and expose is the way that counterinsurgency has been waged, as Chairwoman Penny said, part and parcel of colonialism against all anti-colonial struggles of African and other oppressed peoples fighting for power and self-government. And just to go back for a second, I just want to say this picture, if you go to Google Images, in order to find this picture, all you have to do is search British Kenya. You don't even have to put British people torturing Africans. You just have to put British Kenya. This is the legacy of the British in Kenya and the counterinsurgency against the so-called Mau Mau. And the queen that just died a few months ago, a portrait of her was hung in every detention camp where they tortured African people in the 1950s in Kenya under British colonial rule.
Well, I would just like to say on that, because there is a book about it by Caroline Elkins, that the torture, this was what's called the Mau Mau, or the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army, really fighting against the brutal colonial domination in Kenya by British colonialism. And by the way, I would recommend reading about that, because I just want to say this too, that the word gentrification comes from Kenya, about the US or the British imposition of colonialism in Kenya, because it is one place where the bourgeoisie, the lords and ladies of England, sent their children, especially their ne'er-do-well, and they created in what was called a Happy Valley in Kenya, replicas of the Georgian houses and estates, so it looks like a little England. And they turn, it's disgusting. And basically what they did was, they did a lot of cocaine in the 1930s and drinking and just, eating food all the time and etc. But when the Mau Mau, when the African people rose up for freedom and independence, part of the counterinsurgency was the British breaking glass and stuffing it into the anuses and vaginas of African people. And they also hanged people by the thousands and kept them in barbed wire fences for years, just herded like animals. And I mean, this is counterinsurgency. This is the real thing. And there was testimony just recently in the last few years that Africans forced Britain to hear, which they refused to do for decades. But this finally happened, and some of this has come out, and you can read about it. This is documented, the counterinsurgency against African people in Kenya. It's just one example, but it was hideous. It was hideous. And today there's neo-colonialism and it's under the control of the US with African puppets carrying out the same colonial will and domination of the people there.
Uhuru.
All right, Jesse, go ahead.
No, thank you. And of course, the slogan of the Mau Mau, or the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, was Uhuru.
Yes, it was.
Struggle continues. And there is a portrait of Dedan Kimati, who was one of the leaders, the field marshal of the Mau Mau, right here in the Uhuru Solidarity Center that was produced by the Burning Spear publications. So if we go to the next slide. So as was laid out, colonialism, the colonial mode of production, is characterized by the violent occupation of a whole people by a foreign and alien state power for the profit of the colonial ruling class and the colonizer. Frantz Fanon, who was an African philosopher, writer, he was actually a psychiatrist who had been in Algeria. He was from Martinique, and when he was in Algeria treating the victims of French colonial counterinsurgency torture, he was one to actually join the Algerian Revolution and become a revolutionary himself. And he wrote many books about colonialism, and in particular about colonial violence. And he wrote that colonialism is a machine of naked violence, which only gives in when confronted with greater violence. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela said that colonialism is a vicious beast whose existence makes the existence of the party necessary.
Uhuru.
And Chairman Omali Yeshitela has advanced the theoretical understandings of colonialism to the highest stage, with the understanding that colonialism is not a policy. It's not something that the French government does over there or that the British government did over here. It is actually the mode of production for the entire world economy. And Chairwoman Penny already laid that out earlier, that there's nothing outside of this mode of production, that colonialism explains how every single thing in the world is produced, including even the ideas that are used to justify and explain the mode of production. Go to the next slide. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela says that capitalism requires colonialism as a pedestal. There wouldn't be Europe or the United States of America as we know it, or any of the Americas, actually, without colonialism. And the dialectic, the primary contradiction that is at the heart of the colonial mode of production, the class struggle that is at the heart of the colonial mode of production and is its essence, is the relationship between the colonizer, which is us, and the colonized, African people, indigenous people, Mexican people, and other colonized nationalities throughout the world. An insurgency is when a colonized people rise up in resistance to fight for their liberation. And therefore, counterinsurgency is when the colonial state attempts to destroy the rising up of an oppressed people fighting for their liberation. They attempt to destroy the revolution of the colonized. And this is the definition given by Wikipedia. Counterinsurgency is normally conducted as a combination of conventional military operations and other means, such as demoralization in the form of propaganda, psyops, and assassinations. Counterinsurgency operations include many different facets: military, paramilitary, genocide, political, economic, psychological, and civic actions taken to defeat insurgency. So, as was stated earlier, it is the totality of the colonial reality is counterinsurgency. There couldn't be colonialism without counterinsurgency. Next slide. And counterinsurgency is a war without terms, meaning the colonizer can do anything it wants to the colonized. Unlike when white countries, imperialist powers fight each other, there's no terms of engagement. There's no Geneva Convention. There's no rules prohibiting the, regulating the treatment of prisoners of war or outlawing torture. Everything and anything is on the table when it comes to the colonial counterinsurgency. And next slide. And the African People's Socialist Party. And this cannot be overstated how significant the party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela is in this instance and in many other instances. The African People's Socialist Party is the only force that summed up in the aftermath of the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s that it had been defeated by a counterinsurgency waged by the colonial state. Counterinsurgencies are waged against colonized nations of people. This is important to understand. The chairman has just exploded this whole concept of race as something invented by the colonizer, pseudoscientific concept to liquidate the national identity of African and other oppressed peoples. And there's not a racial counterinsurgency. It's a counterinsurgency against colonized nations that are fighting for national liberation. And finally, from my end, I'll say that while others from the 1960s compromised the political line, there was, in the period of the defeat of the African Revolution, there was a lot of people that sort of, and especially speaking for white leftists, white people abandoned the field of struggle, went off to protest the Vietnam War or fight for the right to drop acid on college campuses. But the chairman got to work summing up what happened, how did this happen, and how can a party be built with the theory and strategy and science and organization to withstand the efforts by the counterinsurgency to defeat it and to move forward towards the ultimate victory of the African Revolution. That this time till it's won was one of the slogans of the African People's Socialist Party. And that is what the party has been doing ever since for the past 50 years. And now I'll turn it over to you, Chairwoman Penny.
Uhuru. Yes, well, before I talk about the church hearings, I really want to thank you for that part of this PowerPoint and these understandings. And one of the things that is, our task from the African People's Socialist Party is to be able to talk to other white people, be able to win other people just like ourselves. And I think that I am just a regular white person born in the Midwest, just nothing extraordinary, unusual about myself, except that when I heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela talk about and describe not only the conditions that African people face here and around the world, and this whole question of parasitic capitalism and this colonial mode of production, but also the future, how African people are going to bring about this future of colonialism, of socialism in the world, of the ability to overturn this horrible system that we live in, but yet we can live with it. I've always wanted to and thought about a lot, and I think we talk about it a lot, like how do we better talk to white people? How do we, what did I understand? How do we talk to people? How do we talk to other white people to not walk away from this, to be able to, every time they see, an African struggling for liberation, they see the Black Power blueprint, they see the Chairman Omali Yeshitela, how can people just like us say, this is the future for all people, including myself. And I want to commit to making this struggle, to go into the white community, to take this on, because the world is in a crisis right now. Look at, they just put 90 seconds closer to doomsday in terms of this US war that it is waging against the people of Russia, against Russia, using the people of Ukraine as a tool, as a weapon, weaponizing the people of Ukraine. So look at what the US is doing in Syria and all around the world, in every place that it is there, overturning people's governments, killing, assassinating. It still goes on every single day, starving people, making policies of economic policies that just drain all resources from colonized countries, and doing whatever they want. There's no Geneva Convention. There's no rights for political prisoners or anything else for African people and oppressed people. How do we win, which is what we have to do, win thousands and thousands of white people to stand on the side of the liberation of African people, the African People's Socialist Party? We have such an ability to, have political ADHD. We don't have to pay attention very long, or we can do something for a minute and then jump into the next thing that interests us, because we have this narrative of, that we are the subjects of history. We create a narrative in which we are the civilized, and we are the victors, and we tell the story, even though we might want to pretend that isn't the way it used to be, but it still is, and that we're in this period of history where the chairman said a defining moment in terms of the environment, in terms of war, in terms of the economy, in terms of corruption and exposure, in terms of just destabilization of January 6th or people going out and killing, just scores of people on any given day. And nothing is as the same as it was. And we have to play a role. We have the opportunity to play a role. We have an opportunity to be part of the future. And it's not about revolutionary tourism and, we're going to go to the latest liberated country or Nicaragua or Venezuela and Cuba and just be revolutionary tourists or something like that. We have to fight here. Back in the 70s, when the African People's Socialist Party had a very deep relationship with the FSLN, the Sandinista Liberation Front of Nicaragua, and there were in San Francisco Bay Area, there were always Sandinistas who spoke at the party's events and at APSC events back in the 70s. And they would always say to the white people, if you want to support the struggle in Nicaragua, join the African People's Solidarity Committee, because the liberation of African people, the leadership of the African Revolution gives leadership to the entire world revolution, and it takes on the struggle that the US government recognized as the leading force that could overturn the US government from within. The US government recognized that, not, the white left certainly, but this is what we have to fight for, that we have to look at, and that we have to say that African people, chairman, just everything that he's had to face in his life, just to continue to struggle, to fight for this, to go up against the headwinds of counterinsurgency, the threats to his family, just all of the things that he's jailings, being thrown in prison, just constantly, but very incredibly courageously bringing this struggle to the world stage, which he has done. And now it's 81 years old, still fighting harder than ever. I just want to say that we want in the white community to stand up and be more than another white person planning our next weekend vacation, or where we're going to have dinner, or some other thing that white people do. And we're going hiking somewhere. No, there's a struggle that's going on, and the world is at 10 seconds before the doomsday clock. And this is when the moment for African revolution is here. And we have to build something. We have to be more than just about our stomachs and pocketbooks. We have to be there. We have to do the hard work that is what we have to do to undo, to pay reparations. It's not just money. It's also doing the work in the white community. So I just want to make that call. And I do want to continue with this PowerPoint and say that in 1975, based on all of the uprising and the incredible struggle of African people throughout the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, that the United States government was forced to hear what was called the church hearings. And those hearings brought to light the fact that the CIA, the National Security Agency, the NSA, the FBI, and even the IRS, which, by the way, has its own military force, were involved in surveilling and attacking and carrying out counterinsurgent programs against African and other peoples inside the borders of the United States against so-called US citizens. And some of the things that came out in the church hearings of 1975 were that the CIA had a program called MK Ultra, a mind control program. This is a real thing. There's a whole book about it called The Poisoner in Chief, and that all of the LSD and the mind-altering drugs that came out and became popular in the 60s were, put there by the CIA. Put these drugs into the white community to destroy any possible revolutionary movement of white people under the leadership of the African Revolution, and also into the African community. So the MK Ultra, which also involved other kinds of mind-altering techniques and even torture, mind control. And it was exposed. In fact, the exposure of COINTELPRO and the COINTELPRO papers that were found through a break-in of an office in Media, Pennsylvania, that had been an FBI office, that showed that this COINTELPRO was a war against the African Revolution. It laid out its goals. You can Google it, you can read it, that it was going to neutralize the African Revolution of the 60s, and it was going to neutralize a Black Messiah, any kind of Black Messiah. It laid the basis for the assassinations that existed. And it also was carried out against indigenous, the American Indian movement, Brown Berets, the Puerto Rican movement, et cetera. It was also exposed this thing called family jewels, which was a covert assassination of foreign leaders, including Patrice Lumumba in Congo, who was fighting for the liberation of African people on the continent of Africa, and much more. There was Operation Mockingbird, where journalists and news people, it was shown, were used as CIA assets, and that the media became officially a voice of the US government and COINTELPRO and counterinsurgent aims. And also there was Operation Shamrock, which is a major telecommunication companies to share information with the CIA. And it was also part of the counterinsurgence programs and COINTELPRO that the police would be used as the front line of defense, as it is everywhere around the world. Another example of counterinsurgency was the Phoenix program, the counterinsurgency inside, it was often called the war inside the war, the counterinsurgency inside the US war against the Vietnamese people, and it targeted something like 50 or more thousand, especially of secondary leadership of the Vietnamese Communist Party throughout the villages and towns of Vietnam. It killed them, it tortured them, it pulled people's fingernails out and basically beat them nearly to death, and then dropped them out of low-flying helicopters into their own villages, everything to send a message to try to intimidate the people. But of course they never did, and the Vietnamese people kicked the ass of the United States and forced them out in the middle of the night to sneak out of South Vietnam. But, you know, again, there was the Communist Party, the Vietnamese Workers' Party of Vietnam, that organized that and brilliantly led the Vietnamese Revolution. Family jewels, like we talked about, attacked so many assassination attempts against Fidel Castro, and they were never victorious at getting him. They were never successful. And again, you know, Cuba has a party, the Communist Party there. It is, you know, a very disciplined socialist government that protected Fidel and was able to, you know, defeat all efforts by the US to destroy that government. And Family Jewels program also targeted Patrice Lumumba and assassinated him. The British, and then British counterinsurgency in Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Sudan, Belgium, in Congo, France, and Algeria. Just the story goes on, and we could have whole programs just on each one of these countries and what the colonizers did to them, did to the people of those countries who were struggling to be free. The FBI was formed in 1908, and in the early years involved in counterinsurgency against the Mexican Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution, which was inspired by the struggles for national liberation around the world. And by the way, last Saturday, the Hands Off Uhuru defense campaign had a brilliant webinar featuring Chairman Omali Shatella, Ward Churchill from the American Indian Movement, and also members of Hands Off Cuba, Anak Bayan, the Filipino liberation struggle, and Unión del Barrio. It was very profound. You can see that on Burning Spear TV on YouTube channel. Marcus Garvey and his movement of 11 million African people around the world was targeted by the FBI. Garvey was convicted of mail fraud in 1923 and sent to prison and deported. In 1919, the first Black FBI agent, James Wormley Jones, was hired specifically to target the Marcus Garvey movement, who again led 11 million members, 11 million African people throughout Africa, the Caribbean, throughout the US and Canada. One of the greatest movements that's ever existed. The FBI also targeted Ida B. Wells, who exposed the lynchings and the East St. Louis, the white mob attack in East St. Louis, right across the river from here. Next slide. Paul Robeson, an African actor and activist, singer, lawyer, brilliant and talented African man who was also charged with being a Russian agent, and he was forced to testify at the House Un-American Activities Council. He had his passport taken away, and he was also probably targeted. His son believes was targeted by MK Ultra, probably, you know, with his drinks drugged with LSD, most probably, while he was in Russia, thinking that that was done by the CIA while he was there. Next slide. W.E.B. Du Bois was hit by the FBI with the same charges as the chairman in the 1950s, and also, you know, just the same thing. He was in his 80s. He was charged as being an unregistered Russian agent, and he did have his passport taken away while he was in Ghana under Nkrumah, and he died there. Next slide. In 1966, COINTELPRO, it was came out, actually dated before that, but again, it was saying that it wanted to neutralize the Black Messiah, prevent the coalition of Black organizations, especially among the youth, and discredit organizations. James Baldwin, Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke were targeted by the FBI. The Black Panther Party was cited as Chairman Omali Shatella has written, it was the main target and bore the brunt of the colonial counterinsurgency, the primary factor of the Panthers' demise. Huey Newton, the leadership of the Black Panther Party, was just went on trial, was forced to be on trial almost every year from the 1960s until his death. Every year he was in prison for part of the time. He faced another trial that was manufactured by COINTELPRO. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton were brutally assassinated, as we know, by the FBI with complicity of the local police departments in the cities they were in. George and Jonathan Jackson were incredible struggles, and they were in the San Quentin prison in California. Just, very, very, very important struggles of the early 1970s. The Colonial Attica prison massacre, which was in some ways the last great uprising of the African Revolution. And it was incredible. It was incredible. If you haven't ever watched a film about it or read about it, you must, when hundreds of mostly African men took over the yard in Attica and created their own community, their own almost state power, until Rockefeller, and they took hostages, but of some of the guards, but they treated them well. And Rockefeller, who was the governor then, came in with armed forces and just, killed scores of Africans and some of the guards. Next slide. Assata Shakur, who is now in Cuba, and Sundiata Acoli were charged with charges on the New Jersey Turnpike in the early 1970s. Sundiata Acoli was just released from prison a few months ago. Assata Shakur is still in exile, perhaps in Cuba. We don't really know. So next slide. The Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968 began the federal funding of local police departments and training them as counterinsurgency forces. That was the introduction of SWAT teams and other militarized police forces. Counterinsurgency analysis of the chairman, which very brilliantly put out something that was there, that nobody else has really summed up, that in addition to COINTELPRO and the attacks on the movement itself, that the United States government salted the earth of the African community by imposing heroin and later crack cocaine into the African community as an ongoing war against the entire community to make sure that they would never rise up again. And that this went along with mandatory minimums, mass incarceration, that we began to see, 800 times greater number of people in prison than in the 1970s that we see now. This is part of the ongoing counterinsurgency, the drugs and the war against drugs and the mass incarceration of African people. The party waged many campaigns with slogans saying, the White House is the crack house, Uncle Sam is the pusher man. And this was especially in the Bay Area of California, and it's where Iran-Contra hearings during this time, and also there were hearings in the city of Los Angeles in which the African community challenged CIA and FBI agents. And it was also near to where Gary Webb was in San Jose, California, who wrote The Dark Alliance, the story behind the crack explosion, which exposed the US imposition of drugs. The party summed up the role of neocolonialism in carrying out counterinsurgency in the US and Africa. That's Mobutu and Jesse Jackson, some examples of neocolonialism in the US and in Congo. Chairman Omali Shatella, again, just brought all of the analysis of counterinsurgency and what it meant to build the party, to take it on, to push back the state, to put the state on trial, to complete the African Revolution of the 60s and fight for the democratic rights of African people, being the highest democracy to be experienced by African people is self-determination. The chairman recognized in the 1960s the counterinsurgency escalated against the African Revolution, that a vanguard party of the African working class was necessary to survive. And that's why he formed the African People's Socialist Party in 1972. The US government agents intervened in the chairman's attempts to create the party, including murder of one of the party's founders, political attacks on another founder, and repeated arrests and trials of the chairman and the junta of militant organizations, which was the organization that the chairman formed prior to the African People's Socialist Party. Next slide. The chairman and JOMO members faced constant threats. The chairman faced threats on his life, constant imprisonment. Next slide. What allowed JOMO to survive the counterinsurgency was the deep connection with the masses of African workers, and that was carried out through what became the African People's Socialist Party. Finally, in 1972, the chairman was able to form the African People's Socialist Party. Next slide. The party has always fought for deep work with the masses and built campaigns around self-felt issues and needs of the people, raising the colonial question. There was no campaign that the party ever raised that didn't put forward that the analysis of that these were conditions imposed on African workers by colonialism, and that the answer was liberation and power in the hands of the African working class. Next slide. The chairman summed up the true class struggle is in the African working class. The class struggle in the whole world is contained in the colonial question. And that is really an important thing that white people have to understand, because white people, all white people, even white working people, even white poor people still sit on the pedestal of on the backs of African people. The true working class, the true proletariat of the world is the African working class and colonized workers, not white people. Even white workers must be under the leadership of the African Revolution, that we all sit on this pedestal. Next slide. The chairman and the party built institutions for political and economic self-sufficiency, institutions which are now long-standing and which have become the foundation of dual and contending African workers' power. That includes like the Black Power Blueprint in St. Louis and other institutions, Uhuru Furniture Stores in Oakland and Philadelphia, Uhuru Foods in Oakland and St. Petersburg, the Uhuru Houses, the Burning Spear newspaper, the Black Power 96.3 FM radio station, and just everything is there about winning dual and contending political power in the hands of the African working class. The chairman solved all the problems, the political and organizational problems facing the revolution. He analyzed the colonial mode of production. He turns history right side up, making African people the subjects of history, and that he was the first to not only fight for reparations, but fight for it as a revolutionary demand in which African people would have and wield state power to carry out the verdict of the first tribunal on reparations to African people held in Brooklyn, New York in 1982. So the chairman was the father of the reparations demand as we know it in the United States. The formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, breaking the isolation of the liberation movement of African people. Next slide. The party took on serious struggle with the white left to stand against the war at home. The party was born as a fighting party whose character has been tempered in the heat of struggle. So the chairman wrote. Next slide. In 1996, there was a brutal assault on the Uhuru House after the police murder of Tyron Lewis, who was 18 years old, just 3 blocks down the street from where the Uhuru House stands. And the party led fierce resistance in the community against that police terror that was coming down Uhuru. Next slide. African Socialist International is building the party around the world and including in Africa. Chair Tafari Magari is the chair of the party in occupied Zania, but also coordinates all the various regions of Africa. It is really building throughout the continent. It is building in the Caribbean and certainly throughout the United States and increasingly other places in the Western Hemisphere as well. Next slide. The Burning Spear newspapers are an incredible institution of the African People's Socialist Party. This is the context for the July 29th attack on the chairman and the party. This is the work the chairman has done. This is why the party was attacked and why the Uhuru Solidarity Center was attacked and our homes, because we are under the leadership of the African Revolution. Next slide. The Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign builds mass support and changes the political narrative by exposing the colonial reality.
Uhuru.
And I think that's it. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny Hess. This has been, as Karpani put it in the chat here, a powerful and deep education that we have undergone tonight in this event. Thanks to you, thanks to the leadership of Chairman Amalia Shatella and African Internationalism, the African People's Socialist Party. And we're going to be bringing on Hallie Murray, a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the Midwest Regional Representative, in just a moment to talk about how you can contribute and get involved in the Solidarity Committee. But first, I just want to say that this is an organization you can join, and you can go to apscuhuru.org and actually apply to become a member of this organization. If you do that tonight, you will get a phone call tomorrow. I'm making that commitment right now. You'll get a phone call tomorrow to follow up with you. And the process of coming into the African People's Solidarity Committee is an incredible experience. You have a sponsorship program, a series of studies and trainings. You're given an assignment and someone who works with you to bring you into this incredible organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party to build the solidarity front behind enemy lines in the white colonizer population and to actually be part of the insurgency. And that's very thrilling and exciting and life affirming. And as we saw from that presentation, part of the counterinsurgency is the complicity of the white colonizer population. So every white person that we peel away from unity with colonialism, complicity with colonialism, into unity with the African Revolution and the anti-colonial struggle it erodes the power base of the colonial counterinsurgency. It depletes them of their reserve force and contributes to their ultimate defeat through the leadership and victory of the African Revolution. So go to apscuhuru.org, apply to join the African People's Solidarity Committee. I was a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement for about a year before I did that, and I joined APSC in 2011, and it is the most meaningful decision I have ever made in my life. And I welcome and invite every single person in this meeting to do the same tonight. So now I'm going to turn it over to Midwest Regional Representative for APSC, Comrade Hallie Murray, and then we will come back for a little bit of Q&A before we do announcements and wrap it up tonight. Uhuru, Hallie.
Uhuru, Jesse, and Chairwoman Penny. Wow, I just want to start by really saluting these multiple presentations. I know the chat was really blowing up with support, and I'm just almost speechless. Half of me just feels sick at the history that we've done, that white people have been complicit in, all these murders of African leaders. And then the other half of me feels filled with excitement and hope, knowing that there is a future and that there is a way out of this for white people. And I I mean, I know I'm not alone in thinking that this presentation just really hit home, knowing that as white people, we can't just watch this webinar and then glaze over, as Chairwoman Penny said, and just go off to our hike or go out to dinner later. I mean, you can go to dinner, but when you come back, you gotta join her solidarity, you know, get active and just be part of this movement, because real solidarity with the African liberation movement for white people, for people of the colonizer nation, means being under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. There's no way around that. We must unite with the strategy that Chairman Amalia Shatella has put forward and has been leading for the last 60 years. And what an honor it is to be a proud member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, as well as Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So we are here tonight. We need to raise the resources, comrades. We have a goal to raise $1,000 at minimum, okay, at minimum, for the African People's Solidarity Committee, specifically to sustain the work of the Uhuru Solidarity Center. This is an extremely dynamic building where Comrade Jesse was filming from, with our historic photos in the background. And this building was one of the many that was attacked by, thank you for this slideshow. So I have a couple images here to show you what we've done in just over a year since the African People's Socialist Party purchased this building in September 2021. It didn't look as pretty back then, but we had multiple volunteer action days. We painted the inside, we painted the outside, we put up this banner. So you can go to the next slide. So inside, when you walk inside, we have Uhuru Planet Reparations apparel featured. We have a storefront, which I'm also honored to be the chair of. And this is a t-shirt store that when you shop at uhuruplanet.com for your different revolutionary apparel, it's also going directly to support the center. So it's our home base. Next slide. And this is the Uhuru Solidarity Center is an institution of the Black Power Blueprint. We are not this separate white people over here doing our thing while the party's over there. We are, it's one Uhuru movement that we are assigned to be within the white community. So the address of this building is 2654 Gravois. For those that aren't here in St. Louis, it's on the south side. It's in a predominantly white neighborhood. And we know we have so much support from the community there. So we are part of the Black Power Blueprint. So when you donate tonight at apsc.org, apsc.org/donate, you're also contributing to the Black Power Blueprint because it's part of the scene. And so next slide, we have some donations coming in. I'm going to read them out in a minute. So this was our grand opening last June. We did have some events before then, but this was like the big, we finished all the painting. We had a incredible speakers, including Deputy Chair Ona Zanaya-Shatella. So next slide. As you can see, it was a very dynamic. And since then, we've been having, every day there's something going on. There's meetings, events, actions, volunteer days. This is just some, we have so many pictures of what's been going on, but I feel like these 4 pictures give you a scope of all the activity that's been happening in the Uhuru Solidarity Center. Next slide. So of course, we got raided on July 29th, and that the footage of the people with the guns there, that is from our security footage in the Solidarity Center. You see there's t-shirts behind them, and you just see the damage that was done. So the damage alone is so much. We need these resources, comrades. So please, especially for the white people out there, if you were affected by the history tonight of this program, the incredible analysis put forward by Chairman Amalia Shatella, as well as Chairwoman Penny has, please contribute tonight at apscuhuru.org/donate. Each dollar will go a really long way. So whatever you got, just put it in. And if anyone can make the full $1,000, just drop it in. Go to the website to make your donation. So and here you just see the incredible damage. But in Deputy Chair Ona's style, we got right to work almost the next day. We had multiple volunteer work days repairing. We had to replace the doors, drill the holes. They smashed out a window. There was just dust everywhere. We're still cleaning, there's still remnants that we find around here. So I just really want to appreciate all our volunteers who came out, Zoya, Brendan, Amanda, Matthew, Len, Jesse. Yeah, just so many people came to help. Uhuru. Next slide. So yeah, please donate. apscuhuru.org/donate. And I really want to appreciate Jesse for putting in $50. Len put in $25. Lisa, $50. Uhuru. Kitty put in $30. And I know more is on the way. So that is a total of $155 we've raised. So keep putting it in the chat there. So we can we can leave that slide up. So just a couple more points that, you know, if white people, if you're watching this program tonight and you're just disgusted by what the state has done to the Black community, to African leaders, Marcus Garvey, to Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these people who have fought for freedom. And if you're, you know, pissed off of thinking that the chairman was harmed in this, you know, this was a near assassination attempt on the chairman, Omali Shatella. So we can take that anger and rage and confusion, you know, that we just hate this colonial capitalist society, and we can convert that into action by joining Uhuru Solidarity Movement as an active member. You can volunteer by, as Comrade Jesse said, you can sign up to become a member of APSC. We can meet with you. We do regular trainings and studies so that you can become a cadre under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And a phrase I like to think of is that white people walking away from colonialism, like the exit door of the colonial mode of production, is the entrance door of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. It's the total opposite of all that, because, you know, and we work hard there. There's always something going on, but it's always for reparations to African people. So by your support tonight will go so long in supporting this building, even just that we can exist, you know, in capital. You know, we have stuff to repair, you know, the rent, like these basic things. But on top of that, we need resources for planning events and doing large scale fundraisers for the Black Power Blueprint. So yeah, I'll just end it there. If people have questions about the programs that we do, put them in the chat and we can let you know more. But thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. Uhuru, Jesse.
Uhuru.
There's a few more donors.
Oh, okay. I just on my phone now. We have Sandy gave a donation of $20. Uhuru Sandy. Johan, $25. Wendy C, $25. Penny gave $25. Uhuru. So our total is, I believe, $275. Deputy Chair gave $100. Uhuru,
Yes.
Deputy Chair, thank you so much. That's really incredible.
And Allison gave $50.
Okay,
Yeah,
Uhuru, Allison.
Yeah.
I know I'm trying to get all the messages coming in. So thank you everyone so much for your contributions. Again, please go to apscuhuru.org/donate. Make your donation, pay your reparations today, and come on by the center if you haven't been there. 2654 Gravois, would love to give you a tour there to show you what we have going on. Uhuru.
We also have $75 from Kara Locke. Uhuru to Kara. So I'm not sure where we're at. I know our calculator is getting that number to us, but we will continue to update you as we move towards the end of our event. Thank you to Hallie.
Looks like we've raised $525 total, so we're over the halfway mark.
Oh yeah, let's do this. I mean,
if someone can give let's see, 475, I believe that would make us reach our goal.
Okay. So yes, I just want to appreciate everybody who's donated and contributed, and let's get to $1,000 tonight. I know we can make this happen. We're already more than halfway there. There are people tuning in on multiple platforms, and if everybody watching gave $10, that's it. Everyone watching right now gave $10, we would meet our goal.
And Wendy S gave 25. Brendan gave 25. I don't know that they were announced. Really, really, really appreciate it. Raya, 25.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, Deputy Chair, 100. Uhuru. Sandy, did people say Sandy, 20?
Yes, I think we did, but we can say
yes.
Uhuru Sandy. Uhuru Deputy Chair. All right. So thank Thank you, comrades. So we'll find out exactly where we're at with that in just a moment. We are a little over time, so just to move into the discussion, and again, don't stop contributing, donating, continue going to apscuhuru.org/donate and contribute towards the work of reparations to African people and solidarity, white solidarity with Black power as embodied by this incredible Uhuru Solidarity Center. Yes, Uhuru Hallie.
We just got another donation from Alex for $50. Uhuru Alex. So we're at a total of 625 now. Almost there. Let's do this. We can do this. Uhuru.
Awesome. Very exciting.
Hallie, you are free to interrupt at any point before we close out. To
Okay.
continue updating us. Chairwoman Penny, I don't know if you can turn your camera on to rejoin us here.
It won't let me right now.
We want to thank, while we're getting that sorted out, we want to thank Leslie, who donated $25. Uhuru Leslie. Uhuru. So we're nearing the end of our program tonight, but as people are continuing to donate at apscuhuru.org/donate, we wanted to just take a few minutes here to answer any questions that have come in. So please put your questions or comments in the chat, in the comment section, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Zoom. We have chat moderators hard at work compiling all of those into a document that we can use to read them off. And I do want to just share a few comments that were made from Secretary General of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Allison in Philly, saluting Chairwoman Penny Hess, bringing the powerful analysis and understanding of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the APSP to us in the white community, breaking it down so we can grasp and unite and get organized under the leadership of the African Revolution to bring down the colonial mode of production, Uhuru. And Kitty Riley.
I'm going to interrupt you and say also Janice gave $25, Uhuru Janice.
So where does that bring us?
And Kitty gave 20 or 30. Really
got that one.
Salute that. Leslie Rose Akumbu, $25. Really appreciate that.
We are at $650 total. Oh, yes.
So where are we at? Can you say that again?
We've raised in donations or pledges to donate 650 total.
And
All
you know,
right.
I want to appreciate Brendan, because Brendan decided to be do a triple whammy tonight. Not only did he donate, not only did he order a $40 USM hoodie from uhuruplanet.com, but he submitted his application to join the African People's Solidarity.
Uhuru, Brendan, and also
Vision of your life right there.
and just want to say, and Comrade Brendan gave an amazing presentation before the Board of Aldermen today in support of the Sanctuary City resolution. Very powerful, Comrade.
Yeah, definitely. And you will be getting a phone call tomorrow.
That's amazing, Brendan. Thank you so much. And yeah, your statement was really excellent earlier.
It was.
All right. Ruby Gittleson, $50.
Uhuru,
right.
Ruby.
$50.
All right, we're gonna weave Q&A into this ongoing appeal. So it's all together now. So it's good. So we do have one question, and I want to direct this one to you, Chairwoman Penny. This is from Comrade Paul Breslin Kessler. Really want to salute that.
Paul.
Just an incredible example of white solidarity with the African Revolution.
Absolutely.
Many years and continuing today. And if you have gotten a phone call about the USM National Convention, it is because of the work done by Paul. And if you have not gotten a phone call, you will be getting one because of the work done by Paul. So
right.
He's asking if you could expound upon how the African People's Socialist Party is the key leadership for all oppressed people, for African people and all oppressed people around the world.
Uhuru, wow, that's a great question. And I think that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has answered that so clearly. And in a certain way, the US government answered it, because it recognized that the African Revolution inside the US was the sort of linchpin for revolutionary struggle, that when the colonized African, urban proletarianized force rises up, when the African working class rises up in rebellion and resistance, it sparks, as it did in the 60s, the revolutionary struggle of indigenous people, the revolutionary struggle of Puerto Rican people, the revolutionary struggle of the Mexican, of the Brown Berets, all of this rose up together. And that it also sparked and gave incredible confidence to the Vietnamese people who were struggling there, and recognized very much, very clearly, the importance of the African liberation struggle inside the US and what that meant for their struggle. It was another front of the struggle that they were taking on against US imperialism as well. And that because the African revolutionary force, the African working class, is so key inside the borders of the United States, right here, making vulnerable the US colonial mode of production. It is, it is tied to, as the chairman said, the revolution of the Americas. It is very much one with the indigenous people and always has been. And that when the party struggles, they must have and do elevate the struggle with them of the Palestinian people, the Irish liberation struggle, the Sandinistas, the revolutionary struggles every place in the world. It elevates this, and it is the leadership of this. It is one struggle, as the chairman really explains. And for us as the colonizer, there's no way that we can sit on a pedestal on the backs of African and indigenous people and lead a struggle for a revolution. It would mean that colonialism would continue to exist. So we have to be under the leadership of the African Revolution. Otherwise, it's just going to be, National Socialism. Wasn't that Nazism? I mean, this has to be, the struggle to defeat imperialism has to come from the foundation upon which imperialism and colonialism rests. And that just makes sense. That's science. And that is our leadership. That is the leadership of the revolutionary struggle of the entire world. So it's very, very amazing, very powerful.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairman Penny. So we want to take one more question, and I know people are continuing to donate. So I see.
I just really want to salute Janet Van Fleet. Really appreciate you, comrade. And Jackson Hollingsworth, $26. Janet Van Fleet, $78. Really, we should be over $700 now. Just really salute and thank all the comrades who have contributed tonight.
We've raised $800 so far, so just $200 more to reach our goal.
All right.
Wow.
Somehow that added up to 800 with the $78 and all that. That's interesting. Okay, so
well, it's different in this doc.
I trust the calculations team. So keep going to APSD. So we're at 800. So 200 more to go. All right.
Yeah.
I'm throwing down the gauntlet. I'm increasing my pledge to 75 total. So I'm going to add 25 to mine.
All right.
Now we only got 175 left to go. I want to see us meet this goal. I know everybody else does. So let's go to apsdahuru.org/donate and do whatever you can to raise $1,000 for the Reparations Center here in South St. Louis. So Chairwoman Penny, we've got one more question. And then we'll move on to announcements and close out. But I feel like this is related to the previous question. And I just really want to appreciate Sophia, who joined us, who was very, participating a lot in the chat and everything. Just really salute you for being here. Sophia says, hi there. I have so many questions. I'm coming in completely new to Uhuru, but in the solidarity movement for the Philippine solidarity movement. My first question is, what is the analysis of, and is there space for non-white, non-African people in solidarity with the Uhuru movement?
Absolutely. And there's different ways of doing that, and including the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, the mass organization, and even in the African People's Solidarity Committee, there have been members of other nationalities who have been part of that before. So I mean, there's a place in the Uhuru movement for everyone. And I really just want to salute and say that the African People's Socialist Party's dedication to the people, the liberation of the people of the Philippines, of, I think, Bayan, is unconditional. And the understanding of what this US colonial mode of production has done to the Philippines, including genocide, including every hideous atrocity of rape and turning, Filipino women into, sex objects for US imperialism. And it's, and the struggle of the people of the Philippines inside the United States, which the party has always, long from its very beginning, had relationships with Philippine organizations and individuals who were part of the Uhuru movement, especially in the Bay Area of California. Just really want to salute the struggle of the people of the Philippines. Uhuru.
Absolutely. Uhuru. All right. And
we have a donation from Sophia Newman. Is that who you were just talking about?
Yes, that's the person.
All right, that's awesome. $30.
Wow, Uhuru Sophia, that's awesome. And also want to salute Sayero, who pledged to do $25 on the first.
Yay, Sayero, thank you.
So we're getting close. We're almost at 900 now. Our calculator is furiously typing away over there, so I'm looking forward to the next update. But before we head into the announcements, I wanted to, okay. I see Sophia says you'll be reaching out to the Uhuru movement in Portland to invite them to an event you're having on February 11th. Thank you so much. That's awesome, Uhuru.
Great.
And Renee pledged $25 this Friday.
All right, Renee, Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Renee.
So just $95 left.
Oh, come on.
Reach our goal.
We got this. So keep it coming. I'm gonna do the announcements a little slow. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna raise this money fast. We're gonna bring it all in. So keep going to apscahuru.org/donate. And thank you, Comrade Hallie and Chairwoman Penny. Before I dive into the announcements, I just want to see if you have any closing remarks for tonight.
Well, this has been a really powerful event. I again want to salute the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Shatella, who, wow, is just on fire right now, fighting fiercely as if he were 20 years old for the liberation of African people nonstop, day in and day out, and is winning and has brought this colonial question to the entire world. If you're hearing the word colonialism being put out there, it has been Chairman Omali Shatella who's fought for that. And I really want to welcome all of the new people and all the comrades that we've known for a long time in the Solidarity movement. Appreciate you so much and all of the work and stand and fight for reparations that you carry out wherever you are located throughout these stolen borders, in states, lands of the indigenous people. This is a new period. Being under the leadership of this movement is liberating for us. It ends our self-imposed isolation from the rest of the world and lets us have, for the first time in history, a principled relationship to make our self-criticism to African people, which is reparations, and to be able to join in solidarity with peoples of the planet Earth and overturning this vicious system and fighting for a world without war, without environmental crisis, without the economic crisis that exists today, and with peace and just the development of humankind. And to be part of that is an incredible honor. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny. And
20 from Johan.
All right, Johan.
Coming in. So was that 75 left to go?
Yes.
75, one person, go ahead and do it. $75 tonight, $1,000 reparations towards the Uhuru Solidarity Center, this incredible institution of the African People's Socialist Party. Uhuru. Hallie, it looked like you were about to unmute again. Nope. Okay. All right. I'm sure you will before we're done. So thank you. Thank you so much again, Chairwoman Penny. And now we're going to bring up some announcements as we wrap up this powerful study. So as we said in the beginning of this meeting, this study tonight was not just about information consumption. It was a call to action. We want to mobilize, we want to organize, we want to recruit you to get active, get involved, do the work of reparations that involves actual boots on the ground in the white community, winning other white people like ourselves to take action now, to say we cannot sit on the sidelines. We're not going to sit by and do nothing while the US government attempts to do what they did in the 1960s to the African Revolution. That is not going to happen. The African People's Socialist Party has already extended itself into the white colonizer population. So if they try anything, they're going to have to deal with us too, just like they did on July 29th. So we want to call on you to join us for a mass meeting, an emergency mass meeting next Tuesday. And Johan just informed me that the $20 was from his caregiver. So Uhuru, comrade Johan, and everyone who's supported tonight. Next Tuesday, January 31st, 6:30 p.m. Central. Register on Zoom, tinyurl.com/USM2023. People will be putting that in the chat as I'm finishing up this announcement, but I want to seriously urge and invite every single person who came to this event tonight to take the next step and come to this meeting on Tuesday night, where you can learn what you can do in your community, wherever you are. Let's say you're the only person in your city that knows anything about this. Now you have a job. Now you have a responsibility to go out and change that and bring hundreds and thousands of other white people into this movement to say, hands off the Uhuru movement, hands off Chairman Amalia Shatella, stop the legal lynching of Chairman Amalia Shatella, or the sky's the limit, as the party says. So come out to this meeting, learn how you can get involved, and learn how you can organize for the USM National Convention that I'll be talking about in just a moment. So go ahead and register. I want to see dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of registrations for next Tuesday's meeting coming in by the time we're done tonight. So let's go to the next slide.
Wendy gave $25. Uhuru, just throwing that
Uhuru
out.
Wendy. All right. Uhuru Wendy. That's awesome. So on Saturday, February 4th, the Hands Off Uhuru Committee will be holding a mass meeting called Meet the Four Unindicted Co-Conspirators. Chairman Amalia Shatella, Director Akile, Chairwoman Penny, and myself. You can participate in this meeting on February 4th. I don't know tinyurl.com/hands-off-meeting. It's in the comments. And make sure to attend. These meetings are very powerful, and I highly recommend that everybody here make plans to be a part of this. This is the campaign that all of us are a part of right now. So next slide. And on March 11th and 12th of this year in St. Louis, Missouri, in the city where the FBI carried out its vicious raids against the African People's Socialist Party, in the city where armed federal agents aimed the laser red sights of their assault rifles on the chest of Chairman Amalia Shatella, we are gathering white people from around the country to say no to the FBI war on Black liberation, to come to St. Louis, to come to the Uhuru House, to hear Chairman Amalia Shatella speak, to hear Chairwoman Penny Hess speak, to go on a tour of the Black Power Blueprint and see these incredible institutions with your own eyes. It is a life-changing experience, and we want this convention this year to be a resounding rebuke to the US government, who thought that when they banged down the doors of this building on July 29th, they would scare white people away from wanting to take a stand in solidarity with what is righteous and good, which is the African Revolution. And on March 11th and 12th, we want you to be there with us to say, they failed, the party is winning, we are winning, and we are not going anywhere. African people have a right to fight for their liberation. We, as white people, have a right to unite with their fight for liberation, because it is the liberation for all of humanity. So white people, say no to the FBI war on Black liberation. Hands off Uhuru. National Convention of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, March 11th to 12th. You can register at usmconvention2023.eventbrite.com. Go to uhurusolidarity.org for more information, including about housing and transportation when you get here. And yes, you can tune in on Zoom or social media or Facebook or YouTube, but you can also be in person with hundreds of other members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and with the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party in the headquarters and experience something that I'm telling you is unlike anything else and will change your life completely and bring you into this incredible revolutionary culture of reparations in a much deeper way. So we really want to urge people to be here. We feel like it is very important to have a strong showing in person in St. Louis on March 11th and 12th to make this statement that you're seeing on screen right now. So next slide. And every single Sunday, not this upcoming Sunday actually, but almost every Sunday, starting the following Sunday after this Sunday, the chairman has a study called Omali Taught Me. Chairman Omali Yeshitela for 2 hours goes into the deepest theoretical questions of African internationalism. This is the most important thing every member or supporter of APSC or the Uhuru Solidarity Movement can do to really gain a better understanding of what this movement is about, to hear it from the chairman himself, the creator of the theory of African internationalism. Every single Sunday, you can watch it at youtube.com/The Burning Spear or facebook.com/Omali Yeshitela, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. And before closing out, I just want to see if do we have an update on the total funds raised?
Yes, but okay, we do. I can't start my video, or I would. We actually have met our goal tonight, thanks to Bob Myers putting in $50. Took us straight to our goal. So thank you, Bob, Uhuru, and everyone who contributed.
Wow, Uhuru,
amazing.
Bob, just salute.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh, is there more? There's more.
There's more.
MQ Mel, $25. Uhuru Mel.
Wow, MQ.
Uhuru
Thank
MQ.
you.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, we have surpassed our goal tonight, comrades. Thank you so much to everybody who participated. Thank you to Chairwoman Penny Haas. Thank you, Comrade Howley. Thank you, Lisa, and the tech people behind the scenes. Thank you to our chat monitors. And above all, thank you to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, and the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So we want to close out by saying unity through
reparations.
Hands off Uhuru.
Hands off Africa.
Uhuru. Thank you, everybody.
Uhuru. Vanguard up.
Relentless.